church traditions, there will be services all this week. There will be services for Maundy Thursday, and there will be services on Good Friday, and people will remember and celebrate and mourn together each separate event of the week. We don't do that so much here, not like some places do. So we instead celebrate both Palm Sunday, the triumphal entry, and also Good Friday with a full reading of that part, the Passion of Christ, in the second half of the service. So according to the Gospel of Mark, chapter 15, verses 1 through 47. At daybreak, the chief priests with the elders and legal experts and the whole Sanhedrin formed a plan. They bound Jesus and led him away and turned him over to Pilate. Pilate questioned him, saying, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus replied, "That's what you say." The chief priests were accusing him of many things. Pilate asked him again, "Aren't you going to answer? What about all these accusations?" But Jesus gave no more answers, so Pilate marveled. During the festival, Pilate released one prisoner to them, whomever they requested. A man named Barabbas was locked up with the rebels who had committed murder during an uprising. The crowd pushed forward and asked Pilate to release someone, as he regularly did. Pilate answered them, "Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" He knew that the chief priests had handed him over because of jealousy. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have them release Barabbas to them instead. Pilate replied, "Then what do you want me to do with the one they call the king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him!" Pilate said to him, "Why? What wrong has he done?" They shouted even louder, "Crucify him!" Pilate wanted to satisfy the crowd, so he released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus whipped, then handed him over to be crucified. The soldiers led Jesus away into the courtyard of the palace known as the governor's headquarters, and they called together the whole company of soldiers. They dressed him up in a purple robe and twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on him. They saluted him, "Hey, King of the Jews!" Again and again they struck his head with a stick. They spit on him and knelt before him to honor him. When they finished mocking him, they stripped him of the purple robe and put his own clothes back on him. Then they led him out to crucify him. Simon, a man from Cyrene, Alexander and Rufus' father, was coming in from the countryside. They forced him to carry his cross. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means skull place. They tried to give him wine mixed with myrrh, but he wouldn't take it. They crucified him. They divided up his clothes, drawing lots for them to determine who would take what. It was 9 in the morning when they crucified him. The notice of the formal charge against him was written, "The King of the Jews." They crucified 2 outlaws with him, one on his right and one on his left. People walked by insulting him, shaking their heads and saying, "Ha! So you were going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, were you? Save yourself and come down from that cross." In the same way, the chief priests were making fun of him among themselves, together with the legal experts. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. Let the Christ, the King of Israel, come down from that cross. Then we'll see and believe." Even those who had been crucified with Jesus insulted him. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, the whole earth was dark. At 3, Jesus cried out with a loud shout, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" After hearing him, some standing there said, "Look, he's calling Elijah." Someone ran and filled a sponge with sour wine and put it on a pole. He offered it to Jesus to drink, saying, "Let's see if Elijah will come take him down." But Jesus let out a loud cry and died. The curtain of the sanctuary was torn in two from top to bottom. When the centurion, who stood facing Jesus, saw how he died, he said, "This man was certainly God's son." Some women were watching from a distance, including Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James the younger, and Joseph and Salome. When Jesus was in Galilee, these women had followed and supported him, along with many other women who had come to Jerusalem with him. Since it was late in the afternoon on Preparation Day, just before the Sabbath, Joseph from Arimathea dared to approach Pilate and ask for Jesus' body. Joseph was a prominent council member who also eagerly anticipated the coming of God's kingdom. Pilate wondered if Jesus was already dead, so he called the centurion and asked him whether Jesus had already died. When he learned from the centurion that Jesus was dead, Pilate gave the dead body to Joseph. He brought a linen cloth and took Jesus down from the cross and laid him in a tomb that had been carved out of rock. He rolled a stone against the entrance to the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where he was buried. Here ends that story. Imagine that we're there. Imagine we're in Jerusalem. We've watched Jesus enter the city. We've waved our palms and we've lined the street with him and we're singing Hosanna and shouting and laughing, so excited that Jesus has come to Jerusalem. Surely now he'll declare himself. He'll rise up at the head of an angelic army and defeat Rome forever. Surely now everyone will recognize him. Forget Herod and Tiberius. Jesus is the King of the Jews. And when the parade's over, we all wandered off to have Passover dinner with our families, because that's what you do. Life went on as usual for us, because after all, we're just folks. Jesus and his followers, they'll be doing all that king-making stuff. We'll be happy to celebrate when the time comes. And then, wait, what? What? He was arrested? He's a blasphemer? The temple police have him? He's been crucified? What happened? He's dead? It's all over then. Our hopes are dead with him. Guess we'll just have to wait for the next Messiah to come along, because there have been, dozens of them in the last couple of decades. We must have been mistaken again. And most of us will give up and maybe mourn a little bit, mostly for ourselves, and go back to our pre-Jesus lives. What we don't know in Jerusalem back then, what nobody seemed to know, even though he had told them, is that in a few days he won't be dead anymore. He won't be dead anymore and he'll live forever. But we don't know that yet, and we don't understand at all. When I was in the seminary in Indiana, I had a classmate from Kenya, and we walked together to class one snowy February afternoon, and I noticed he wasn't wearing a hat. So I asked him where his hat was, because, it was cold. And he replied he was toughening himself for the cold. And he thought it was something he could get used to, like you get used to hot weather. I explained to him that he needed to cover his head up because his body heat would escape quickly through his scalp, and that wasn't just uncomfortable, that was potentially deadly. There's no such thing as toughening yourself up to withstand the cold. You simply have to cover up. We talked a little bit about winter. He said, I really just can't get used to the way everything looks so dead here in the winter time. At home, if we saw trees that looked like those over there, no leaves, no green, nothing that looks even vaguely alive, we would cut it for firewood, because clearly it is dead. So I explained spring. Not everybody gets spring. Not if they're from Kenya or maybe Southern California. And because we were in a seminary, it was pretty easy to make it a theological conversation. We couldn't help ourselves, centering around the resurrection and our hope for new and eternal life. And how for people like me who grew up back east, spring, resurrection, all that all goes together. The hope is always there, all winter long. Now I do understand how many of you sitting here don't know anything about winter snows and the hope that comes with tiny, seemingly suicidal crocus flowers breaking through the snow on the ground. We do have some trees here that lose their leaves in the winter, and we have some spring blossoms like flowering almond trees and nectarines. But that despair that strikes so many in midwinter after months of gray skies, that really hard to dismiss feeling that everything is dead and hopeless and that will never ever be spring, that's not part of our reality here in Southern California. Boxer is an adorable little dog who lives with friends of mine, and I would say belongs to, but that's not reality either. But he lives with friends of mine. And when I visit, usually the very first one to greet me at the door is Boxer, holding a toy in his mouth, wanting me to throw it. Because he's like about that big. It's just the cutest little thing ever. Wags his whole body with the toy in his mouth. He loves to chase his toys so much that sometimes he could be distracted from what's on my dinner plate with a well-timed toy toss. Only sometimes, though. Then on St. Patrick's Day, I heard that Boxer had been rushed to the vet with a slipped disc. They had tried a laser treatment. Prognosis was grim. Boxer was paralyzed from the waist down. He would never walk again without really, really expensive surgery. My friends are students. The vet thought it would be better just to put him to sleep so he wouldn't suffer. My friends took him home to think and pray and try to figure out ways to pay for this really expensive surgery on their beloved pup. They asked all their friends on Facebook to pray for solutions, and strange things began to happen. On March 19th, 2 days later, my friend wrote, "He's paralyzed in his back legs and he moves just as fast around the house as he always did. He still whines annoyingly to play with his ball and even wagged his tail when he greeted me at the door when I came home today. One day, he figured out how to walk on his knees. And then, just a couple of days ago, he figured out how to lock one leg and sort of move it around and then the other one so that he could walk better. Boxer does not know he is broken. He has no idea that he's broken. My friends are talking about maybe finding one of those little, harness cart things to be on his back legs so he can get around. He's still broken, technically, but his life is not over. It's just different. He is a miracle. I have long felt the power of the resurrection in this congregation. Even when it seems when everything's dying, even when we don't have enough money to do what we would really like to be able to do with our ministry, even when we don't have the bodies we need to do the things that we would like to do with our ministry, I have felt the power of the resurrection. Like a crocus barely peeking its head above the snow. When you see one of those little purple flowers, you sort of pray that the cold won't kill this one, and it will survive. and then it will really be spring. I feel a little sometimes like Bullwinkle the moose, you know, trying one more time to pull a rabbit out of that hat, saying, this time for sure. I felt that power moving and swirling like the sap in the trees as they get ready for that break in the weather, and then kind of retreat back saying, yeah, not yet. Holy Week has begun. It's a week for reflection, for introspection, for looking forward to what comes next, to hope. It is that incredible hope against miracle kind of hope week. It's a week to look toward the grave and then beyond. Beyond the gray skies, beyond the brokenness, beyond the sorrow and the pain, to the new life we believe will come, that we have faith will come, because it has always come and always will come, if we will trust in God to guide us.